From WOKR, this is a News Source 13 special, The State of the City. Now, here's Don Alhart.
Good evening. This is indeed a big night for the man we call mayor. Slightly more than a year after taking office, Rochester Mayor Bill Johnson is about to deliver his first State of the City address. The site of tonight's event, appropriately enough, Rochester's historic City Hall. The mayor will be making his remarks from inside the atrium and is scheduled to begin in just a moment. First, we join News Source 13's Ginny Ryan for a preview of what we can expect tonight at City Hall.
Don, it is a packed atrium here at City Hall. There are about 400 people on hand to hear the mayor's speech. He's calling it Making It Happen, and the mayor will address four major areas in his State of the City speech tonight. First is education. The mayor is expected to call for stricter guidelines on spending. Next, economic development. The mayor will point to improvements already underway downtown and a need for more stimulus in other city neighborhoods. He will also talk about restructuring human services. And finally, the mayor will address public safety and is expected to make an impassioned plea regarding the violence among our young people. Now, here is City Council President Lois Geis, who will introduce the mayor for tonight's speech.
Good evening. Welcome to City Hall. As the President of City Council, I have the privilege of introducing Mayor Bill Johnson, a man who we all know and respect. I'm not going to list his numerous accomplishments or past honors, but instead tell you a story about the man. Opening day, 1994, Silver Stadium. It was a picture-perfect day, sunny and warm, a sellout crowd for the Red Wings. Mayor Bill Johnson threw out the first ball, an important ceremonial task for the mayor of Rochester. Grandfather Bill Johnson sat with his grandson Blaine with hot dogs, peanuts, and pop, sharing the joys of baseball. Bill Johnson, the mayor, recognizes the importance of being an active part of the community. Bill Johnson, the father and grandfather, knows that families are the building blocks of this community. I give you the mayor of the city of Rochester, Bill Johnson.
Thank you. President Geis, members of the City Council, and my fellow citizens. 1 year ago, I assumed the mayor's office and declared that I did not intend to preside over Rochester's demise, but its resurgence. Not over its exhaustion, but its invigoration. Not over its withering, but its blossoming. I vowed to set my shoulder to the wheel for 4 years to revitalize this city. I was not alone in this endeavor. Thousands of metropolitan Rochester's residents of all political stripes and income brackets, stood beside me. They had not given up on their town, nor forgotten what those who had come before them had worked so hard for. No, they felt compelled to maintain the legacy of Rochester, a legacy that testifies to this city's energy, inventiveness, and sense of common purpose. Though all of us might not feel this legacy, we carry it with us. The same spirit that propelled George Eastman to manufacture his first photographic dry plate propels a new breed of entrepreneurs in the high-tech incubators and small businesses of the city. The same spirit that impelled Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony, and the founders of FIGHT to take to the streets in defense of human rights impels neighbors on city streets to band together against a new assault on their human rights, crime and violence. If we listen, we can hear the legacy. It says, we can make it better, we can make it happen. Making it happen. Those three simple words drive my administration and the efforts of countless people who recognize a collective responsibility to ensuring that Rochester reaches its potential. Our obligation rests with one simple truth. The healthier our community, the greater potential for its growth. Could the innovative genius of Eastman, Carlson, Bosch, Lom, Sibley, Cunningham, Gleason, and others have reached its potential in a community where 3 in 10 children grew up in poverty and 25% of those children never finished high school? The commitment of these innovators to ensuring the well-being of Rochesterians suggests otherwise. Are we now willing to bet that the economic future of this region is not somehow linked with the overall health of the community? In my inaugural address, I made it clear that no one had given me a magic wand to wave and make our problems disappear into thin air. In the real world, wishful thinking does not solve problems. Only clear, focused, collaborative efforts, well-planned and well-executed will. Magic wands don't make things happen. Blueprints do. And so I unfurled the blueprint for change in front of this community, a blueprint resonant with Rochester's can-do spirit, a blueprint that asks city government, how can we make the system work? How can we provide better services at lower costs? A blueprint that asks citizens, how will you help us in this common effort? Which asks different levels of government and the nonprofit sector, how can we change our systems to make them more effective? But the blueprint not only poses questions, it answers them. 1 year later, we see the first products. We see the signs of new systems emerging. This evening, I want you to return to that plan to find out how far we have come in reaching our goals, how far we have come in building the 5 foundations of a healthy community: education, safety, jobs, social support, and local cooperation. Time will not permit a complete listing of these accomplishments, but a detailed report is available for your closer inspection. In these next few minutes, let me focus on some important highlights and outline our plans for 1995. First, however, I would like to briefly reflect on some unique insights I have gained about this job. When I first announced my candidacy, some believed that I did not have the right temperament, that I was better suited for other work. I don't know about you, but I think I've had a pretty good year, and that the job and I match up pretty well. I've learned some pretty valuable lessons about our city's problems and its unique assets, and about our willingness to lay aside past differences and work together for a healthy, vibrant, and inclusive community. By visiting other cities and seeing firsthand how they are dealing with similar problems, I am greatly convinced that what we are trying to achieve is not improbable or impossible. I came to office with a renewed sense of public service, the people's servant who has been given the opportunity to act on your behalf from the inside. Still operating as an advocate in a different setting, I have labored to ensure that the average citizen's voice is heard and your issues are resolved. In too many instances, government service has been viewed as an opportunity to advance the interests of a small group of people. We are ensuring that all citizens have equal access to their government. We have initiated regular occasions where citizens can come to City Hall without appointment, or where we meet with them at neighborhood sites. Mayor's Night In and City Hall on the Road have been very popular. I have personally spoken to or met with over 1,000 groups, organizations, and individuals during this first year. The input and encouragement that I have gotten from these encounters have been invaluable. The role of government is being closely reevaluated in many circles. At both the federal and state levels, newly elected leaders have promised to scale back the cost and scope of government as both unnecessary and intrusive. I offer no apologies for my belief that government can be a positive force in people's lives. I simply do not believe that the most desirable or the most effective governments are those which are the most stingy or the most cruel to its least powerful citizens. Governments must not be permitted to shirk their responsibilities to provide quality education, accessible and affordable recreational and cultural opportunities, decent housing, public safety, a clean environment, and affordable health care. I hope that most of you share that vision and that you will hold me, as well as the doom and gloom politicians, strictly accountable to maintaining it. Now, let us review our progress and our plans. In 1995, 9 years after the community embarked on an ambitious education reform movement, we see diminishing marginal returns on our investment. That doesn't have to be our legacy. The blueprint points to another way, towards restructuring the school district's budget and organizing schools for performance. I have pledged to do all I can to make sure the school district lives within its means. And last March, together with the City Council, we came to an agreement with the school board to hold the line on spending. Instead of presenting taxpayers with an additional $9.2 million bill, we froze the city's contribution to the district at the same level allocated for the 93-94 budget year. But to ensure future generations educational resources of their own, we needed to do more than hold the line. We needed to move the line back. Throughout the year, my transition team on school budget restructuring met to evaluate the district's budget process, make specific recommendations to improve that process, and identify areas where the district could trim some of its costly administrative fat. We didn't do this out of spite or mean-spiritedness. We did it because we felt we were mortgaging the educational future of our young people if we didn't control spending. In July, we held public hearings for educational experts, parents, students, school board members, and union representatives. In different ways, they all said the same thing: the system doesn't work. City Council and I considered their recommendations and outlined proposals to take to Albany, proposals that will help improve the governance of our schools. And last month, we announced the findings of the August Group, a panel commissioned by former County Executive King and me to develop a plan for transforming Rochester's public education system. We intend to aggressively pursue these efforts. We ask every citizen to sign the Rochester Community Contract for Student Success, committing the community to implementing the final recommendations that will be developed by a working group of community leaders, parents, and educational leaders. Let each and every person in this room and in this community take a pledge that we will no longer sacrifice future generations to satisfy the interests of our own constituencies. This administration has made educational reform a top priority and backed that commitment up with a clear reform program. It is now up to all of us to make this program succeed. We must no longer allow our children to suffer the consequences of our timidity. It's one thing for those who build a community to have the right training. It's another to have investment capital needed to finance Rochester's revitalization. That investment capital for revitalization comes in the form of economic development. Over the past year, this administration, working in partnerships with the private sector and committed citizens, has set the necessary economic infrastructure in place to generate healthy job growth. During 1994, we made investments to the tune of $38.4 million, investments that created 514 new jobs and kept another 760 jobs in the city. If we take a closer look at our job generating infrastructure, the first thing that strikes you is the extent to which the city, businesses, and citizens are working together to strengthen the development process. Today, instead of working at cross purposes, city staff and representatives of small and medium-sized businesses sit around one table to assess the city's resources and determine how we can provide better assistance to local businesses. Today, instead of ignoring the frontline knowledge of city residents and neighborhood merchants, city government enlists them to plan for better, more suitable development of neighborhoods with a particular focus on creating jobs. A sector planning strategy called Neighbors Building Neighborhoods is fully integrated within both a state economic development zone and a federal enterprise community. Over the next several years, the state and federal governments will combine with local government and the private sector to leverage investments of more than $70 million and create over 1,800 new jobs. As we work to improve the flow of communications between business owners and City Hall, we've improved the flow of capital as well. We will, within the next few days, announce the details of a new community commercial development partnership, which will link the resources of local banks and city government to establish more neighborhood-based businesses. That's good news for city business owners, and it's good news for the city of Rochester. The signs of aggressive development are all around, especially downtown, where we watch as the core of the world's image center takes shape for the 21st century. Downtown's enhanced vitality not only sets the pace for the region's economy, it cements our reputation as a world-class city for all who come to do business or to visit. In 1994, work continued on Bosch & Lomb's global headquarters, dramatically altering the urban landscape. Upmarket shoppers and independent film lovers celebrated a new Foreman's and an expanded Little Theater. The future prospects of downtown housing were boosted by the beginning of anticipated renovations to the former Scranton's building for a new 86-unit housing project. Ball fans everywhere rejoiced at the Frontier Field groundbreaking, and Rochester's legacy of commitment to the pursuit of knowledge continued with the finalized Rundell Library expansion plans. In 1995, we expect this city to gain national attention for our first American Music Festival. Tourists from all over the country will come to Rochester to hear the best music this country has to offer, and we plan to make their stay in our city more enjoyable by enhancing the East End, Water Street, and the High Falls areas as entertainment sites, all connected by a downtown trolley system. Dynamic economic development radiates from downtown and throughout the city. At city-developed parks like Hollander Technology and Cumberland Industrial, 8 businesses, Monroe Muffler, Crucible Steel, and Adflex among them, thrive. Economic development is not just the humming of machines, whirring of gears, or buzzing of computer networks in industrial parks. And economic development is the reopening of neighborhood grocery stores like the Highland Park Market on South Clinton Avenue with the city's help. Our goal in 1995 is to reopen the closed store on North Clinton Avenue. Economic development is the lively neighborhood commerce spawned by businesses like Petrillo's Bakery, Creator's Hands, Public Footwear, and Shoe Sense, all of whom receive city financial assistance. These businesses anchor their neighborhoods. They can tip the scales away from blight toward future investment, and we expect the scales to tip further towards revitalization in 1995. Strong neighborhood businesses, a revitalized downtown, employment opportunities. These things don't come from wishful thinking. They come from a community-wide effort to secure the investment capital needed to power the city into the next century. Now, we've laid the foundation for a strong economy and an educated workforce. Now we must reinforce this foundation with a safety net that will allow more people to participate. With 30% of our children growing up in poverty, drugs, and teenage pregnancy rife in the city as well as the suburbs, and unacceptable levels of violence, the odds that our economic engine will roar into the next century are diminishing. We have begun to construct more accessible, customer-specific, and results-oriented human service systems. Our Community Schools Initiative, a collaborative effort between the school district, human service agencies, and local government, has worked with several schools and agencies to create more coordinated services. At school number 6, for example, children and their families can take advantage of a menu of services ranging from family counseling to social service assistance to health care services. This setup will allow teachers to do what they do best, teach children, and will free them from their role as social workers. Our Change Initiative at school number 2 in Jefferson Middle School works under similar principles. We expect to continue our efforts throughout this year, bringing 10 similar community school partnerships into existence. While the city does not directly control many of the institutions or resources in the human service arena, we have worked and will continue to work vigorously to bring about needed reform. We have already begun to make our recreation centers more accessible, and we will continue to identify ways to use that space creatively. We need not just open up recreation centers, but schools as well, to any citizen that requests their use. The public pays for the construction, maintenance, and renovation of these buildings. In every sense of the word, we own these buildings, and what we own, we should be able to use. The dialogue on human service restructuring extends beyond coordinated service provision to coordinated problem solving. Agencies need to collaborate and consolidate and provide services that are convenient for their customers rather than for their staffs. No youth serving agency ought to be closed in the evenings, and no family service agency ought to be closed on the weekend. We will shortly be convening a funders summit and challenge those funders to use their money to produce better results. If an agency cannot adjust to these new conditions, perhaps its funding ought to be shifted to those who will. We must develop a restless dissatisfaction with the status quo because the old ways are no longer acceptable. The challenges for 1995 are immense, but none offer more potential for community revitalization than our efforts to reduce violence, particularly among our young black males. We can take very little comfort from the fact that our 1994 homicide rate was slightly lower than our all-time record that was set in 1993. We are not trying to merely lower our crime statistics, but we want to attack the factors which contribute to this slaughter of human lives. This slaughter caused the deaths of 41 black males in 1994 from a total of 66 homicide victims, and the arrest of 36 black males as suspected perpetrators of this grisly violence. We can no longer afford to be timid about this. Violence saps all of the energy and vitality from a community, and it renders everything else we're trying to achieve meaningless. I will neither be timid or intimidated by a small number of people who are so sick or depraved that they shoot a 12-year-old boy in the head while he's watching TV, or shoot into a house and kill the young mother of 2 children, or stab a high school student for bumping into them, inflicting wounds that require 90 stitches to close, or invade the home of a 69-year-old woman and kill her, even though she was physically incapable of harming her assailant, are those who kill for a small amount of money, an article of clothing, or a drug deal gone bad. We have adopted a zero tolerance for these type of crimes and zero sympathy for these kind of criminals. The Rochester Police Department, under the excellent leadership of Chief Robert Warshaw, has recently announced and implemented a series of crime-fighting and violence reduction strategies that will be carried out as long as circumstances warrant them. Our traffic checkpoints have yielded unbelievable results in the first few days. More than 100 arrests on drug and weapons charges. It is almost as though people are either paying no attention to the news or do not believe that we are serious. By now, they should know the obvious. Let them keep coming, and we will keep arresting them and confiscating their vehicles. We will urge the district attorney and the criminal court judges to deal with each case seriously. There will be no welcome mat for criminals in this city. My special counsel, Van White, will be using his powers as a special prosecutor this year to bring some of the more disturbing cases to speedy trials with the cooperation with District Attorney Rowland. We will continue to target violent repeat offenders under the ROPE program as aggressively as this past year. During one remarkable period, we went nearly 40 days without a homicide. We want to have numerous such periods this year. We expect citizens to flood our new gun hotline and turn in their neighbors and associates who traffic in and use illegal firearms. The parole absconder program will continue to work with state officials to get violent parole offenders off the street. We will also vigorously enforce the recently enacted No Guns in School program, and we urge teachers, administrators, and students to cooperate with this effort 100%. There is no higher priority in this city than the safety of our children in our schools. Many people have telephoned or stopped me on the street to praise these recent initiatives. Our community is not alone in implementing such stringent measures. A gun detection program recently implemented in Kansas City, Missouri, has been credited with reducing gun-related crimes by 49%. This has led the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Eric H. Holder, Jr., to announce last week the introduction of a similar program in Washington, D.C., with the full support of newly elected Mayor Marion Barry. Further, Mr. Holder seeks to challenge what he calls the romanticized perception about guns that are prevalent among so many young black men. The fruits of such a campaign will be beneficial. Holder believes, and I quote, "I believe that if you can really change the way young people, especially young black men, view the possession and use of guns, you can have a significant impact on the quality of life in this city." Both Holder and the mayor of Kansas City, Emanuel Cleaver, are African Americans. This is a campaign that must be waged and won. I did not take office to increase the number of young black males in jails, but neither do I want to increase the number who go to their graves prematurely. We who are the responsible members of our community are called to wage an aggressive battle against the stupid violence that threatens the very core of our community. I am tonight calling upon every black minister, every black man who views himself a leader in this community, every father and every male child to join Chief Warshaw and me in the most important initiative that has ever been undertaken in this community. The rest of the community, including mothers, can join us. But I want black men to stand up, in the words of one of my heroes, David Parker, and take back our streets. By issuing this call to action to black men, I do not intend to demean or diminish the efforts and commitments of many people, including women and persons of other ethnic groups. But the destructive behavior of young black males has reached epic proportions. Too many women have fought this battle alone, raising their sons and grandsons alone. Black men must be held strictly accountable for turning this crisis around. If you know someone with a gun or predisposition to violence, help us disarm him. Help us turn him away from violence and self-destructive behavior. Help us prevent him from becoming another crime statistic. Help us save lives and build character. Help us design programs that address the total needs of these young men. Very shortly, we will be announcing a new program that will identify job opportunities for these men. The city will work with local businesses in a coordinated and collaborative fashion. We will win this war against crime and violence by every legitimate means necessary. We cannot afford to fail. A great American, whom I will identify later, sums up the challenge in this fashion. And I quote, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. The true neighbor will risk his position, his prestige, and even his life for the welfare of others. In dangerous valleys and hazardous pathways, he will lift some bruised and beaten brother to a higher and more noble life." And that's what we're going to do with our young men, lift them to a higher and more noble life. This evening, we have compared the work of this administration and the citizens of Rochester in revitalizing Rochester to people building a house from a blueprint. Both require training, financial capital, health, and protection. They also require one more thing, the help of our neighbors to make certain that whatever we build thrives. It is a sad fact of contemporary life that problems are catching up with people wherever they live. I am reminded of the comment of a Brockport resident recently when he learned that several high school students were engaged in a gun-running program operation at their local school. The man expressed incredulity at the news when he said, "I thought we lived too far away from the inner city for this to happen in our town." As the great heavyweight champion Joe Louis once remarked, "You can run, but you cannot hide." Too many parents are discovering that the very problems they were escaping when they moved to the suburbs and the rural parts have caught up with them. So rather than escaping, it is far more productive to confront the problem head on and solve them once and for all. I've seen a new awareness from a larger group of citizens in the county of Monroe to work together for common solutions, whether it is in the areas of education reform, crime and violence, family and children's issues, community economic development, and equitable distribution of government revenues. My journeys have not only taken me into every city neighborhood during the past 12 months, but into many suburban neighborhoods as well. More and more people are realizing that whether they live in the outer part of the county or in its innermost neighborhoods, our fates are inextricably bound. Bob King realized this, and he and I had begun to develop a good working relationship. Without this, it is highly unlikely that the state would have approved funding for both the new stadium and the War Memorial. Our partnership extended to the development of a neighborhood service team concept, which combines the staff resources of city and county to make a concerted impact on neighborhood disorder. Our economic development staffs have worked cooperatively on several key projects, and our social service staffs are working to perfect and expand the change initiative in our schools. Perhaps the most ambitious undertaking was the empaneling of the August Group, which, working together with the key educational and community leadership, should design dramatic improvements for our city schools. Now that Bob has departed for Albany, the common ground that he and I pursued will be continued with his successor. I had never met Jack Doyle before this past Monday, but in our meetings to date, he has evinced a sincere understanding of our mutual issues, and he and I will not miss a beat. He is a city man who has lived here all his life, and his children were educated in the city schools. He is, like me, dedicated to intergovernmental cooperation and believes in earnest and honest dialogue as a necessary condition to resolving issues. As a criminal court judge, he has dealt firsthand with many of the people who disrupt peace, order, and security. I look forward to working with him, particularly as we seek and achieve a satisfactory resolution of the sales tax distribution. I know you're going to clap for that. We have also made meaningful strides with other local governments. The examples of collaboration that we have started in the town of Brighton offer us much encouragement for future prospects with other towns and villages. As I noted in a recent op-ed piece, people are tired of partisan bickering, of the zero-sum games that assert that my interests are incompatible with yours, that says that someone has to always win and someone else has to always lose. People are tired of the rhetoric that divides communities into us versus them. We need to communicate and work through our problems and towards our collective interests, because that is the only sure way that any community has ever moved forward. We can all gain and prosper by working together, not by running and hiding. So tonight, I report to you in a very optimistic fashion. I feel good about the work of my administration and the work of so many of you throughout the community who have stepped forward and in many various ways have said, I want to make it happen. Each of you are my heroes. People like Audrey Smith and Al Jones, Clara Crittenden, Francis Rudolph, and Francis Alexander have resolved to address violence through the families and friends of murdered children and victims of violence. David Kuhn is one of my heroes. This summer, he volunteered to coordinate the Rochester Challenge in the northeast sector of our city, the same neighborhood where his daughter was brutally murdered 8 months earlier. He chose not to run and hide. Jesse LeSure is another hero. He convinced his favorite first cousin to turn himself in after he had committed a terrible crime. Jesse had to endure the censure of some members of his own family, but he did what he believed to be the right thing. There are many people running the streets of our city who have committed horrible crimes, and they're being protected by persons who feel a greater sense of loyalty or fear to the criminal than to the victim. These people need to follow Jesse LeSure's example and turn those people in. David Parker is a special hero. When Sergeant James Strassner was shot in December, David came to his immediate aid and comfort. The sergeant and his family credit Mr. Parker with saving his life. As David said at a meeting at City Council just last evening, all citizens must work with the police to take back our streets. And finally, there is Jamal Sinkler, stand up Jamal, who is a 12-year-old, 7th grader at Monroe Middle School, whom I met in May 1993. Then he was a 5th grader at number 44 school, who moderated a debate between the mayoral candidates. He and his classmates did a fantastic job researching and presenting the issues. Shortly after the primary, and before it was clear that I would win, I got a letter from Jamal with a $5 check. He told me, you can sit down, Jamal, if you'd like. He told me that I was the best person for the job, and he was sending me a part of his weekly allowance. The other evening, Jamal called me at the office and discussed some of his ideas about involving young people in projects to beautify the city and getting involved in positive activities. He and I are going to have breakfast on Saturday to further discuss his ideas and how he can be involved. If every kid in the city was like Jamal, we wouldn't have any problems. He assures me that there are many more like him, like his friend, Michael Williams, who he brought with him tonight. Stand up, Michael, so we can see you. And these and many other young people are just waiting for the opportunity to be involved. There are many more heroes out there, too numerous to mention on this occasion, but your good works are not unnoticed. We will mobilize others to join you as we continue our efforts to make this a great community to live and work. A few days ago, we celebrated the birthday of a great American hero, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man who dedicated himself to making the nation what he knew it could be. I quoted him earlier, and I close with another. Human progress, Dr. King says, is neither automatic nor inevitable. No social advance rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. Every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and the passionate concern of dedicated individuals. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. Ladies and gentlemen, let's finish what we started. We have the will. We have the plans. Let us build on this blueprint. Thank you very much.
Rochester Mayor Bill Johnson delivering his first State of the City address and concluding, and a big round of applause and a lot of rounds of applause during the speech, particularly during his comments relating to violence in our city. Jenny Ryan is at City Hall, and I'm sure has some reaction down there. Jenny, if we could join you, if you could, first of all, share with us your sense of what it was like to be there tonight. From this perspective, it certainly seemed that a lot of support for just taking back our streets and control of the city.
You hit it right on the head, Don. That drew the most applause from the people here tonight. I was most impressed, and I think a lot of people were, with the mayor's ability to talk about the lows of society and the highs of society, pointing out the number of young black males that became homicide victims in 1994 and the number of young black men charged in those homicides. And then in the next page of his speech, he talked about the heroes and pointed out young Jamal Sinkler, who I had a chance to speak with earlier before the speech, and I will speak with now afterwards. So he had a real ability to talk about what got him down and some of his goals and the things that will bring us up and help achieve goals as well. Public safety, the big issue, he called it the greatest challenge to reduce violence on Rochester streets, and called on everyone, especially black men in the community, to join the effort.
I noticed too, really a lot of comments pertaining to the relationship between Rochester and Monroe County, with Bob King going to Albany now. A lot of concern, and he seems to, I think the quote was that with Judge Doyle, they will not miss a step or miss a beat in continuing that relationship. A little subtle challenge, perhaps, as far as that sales tax distribution, but I think a spirit of cooperation seeming to be surfacing there.
I was watching County Legislator, a Republican, Mike Hanna, when the mayor said that. Mike Hanna did not applaud when the mayor said that, but a number of people did, including Councilman Stevenson, and this means a great deal to them. And I think the cooperation from Justice Doyle, now County Executive Doyle, is evident here. Interestingly, Don, I found it interesting that the mayor had not met the new county executive until Monday, but pointing out a very positive note that John Doyle is a city resident, which will mean a lot, I think.
I think so. Maybe they can all get to go together on breakfast on Saturday with Jamal and exchange some ideas.
Very proud young man tonight as well. He should be.
Okay, Jenny Ryan with our coverage, our live coverage, of course, tonight of the mayor's address downtown. Really, the mayor tonight taking us on a journey through Rochester history, going back to the days of George Eastman, the challenges as far as industry, and linking a lot of what he had to say in terms of the economic development of this community, the education of our children, to what is happening in our downtown area, what is happening on our city streets. Brought it all down really to the issue of violence and taking control of that violence, and really pledging to move ahead with the support that he, as a black mayor, can call upon the young black males in this community as no one else perhaps can to fulfill those dreams. And then pointing, of course, to the future, looking ahead, as we said, to Jamal Sinkler, who shared that $5 and represents the role models that all city students can perhaps look to. This will conclude our coverage. Of course, we'll have a complete look at the mayor's remarks on News Source 13 at 11 o'clock tonight. We invite you to stay tuned now as we join All-American Girl from ABC, already in progress.
More Rochesterians get their news from News Source 13 than from any other source.